we starting from the beginning?
Yeah, why not? In 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to Depression Vacation Podcast. I never get to do the intro, so I usurped it.
Yeah, I thought about that a couple of times. I'm like, I'm usually the one who's like, hello and welcome to Depression Podcast. I am Hal.
And I'm Shannon. This is episode 9.
Woo, we're getting close to 10 episodes. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, we just got to remember to record them, that's all.
Yeah. Well, actually, if we're strictly speaking, this was like the same day we recorded it last week as well.
That is true.
And there were holidays, so I was actually kind of thinking at one point, I was like, maybe we take a break, like maybe, Depression Vacation, ate a lot of turkey, has the tryptophan, is just taking a food coma this weekend.
For sure, yeah. I forgot we even had a podcast over the weekend.
Yeah, well, I didn't because lots of my family really liked the podcast too. And Wallace and Josh were actually at my house for Thanksgiving for a little bit too. And we talked about that as well because Wallace is very much also enjoying it. Thank you, Wallace, by the way. Also, Steve and Kathy and Christy and everybody and my family for listening to the podcast and making me feel supported in that way. That was mushy.
That is so super nice. Nobody loves me as much as they love you, Hal.
Yeah, well, that's not true.
Well, none of my family listens to the podcast, so.
Yeah, my sisters and I get along pretty well, though. Like, there definitely were some rough periods growing up. I mean, as specifically, I had to figure out not to be a shit, and I'm sure they did as well, but I don't want to speak for them. But, we all get along pretty well right now. And actually, I was talking to my girlfriend about that because she does not necessarily have the same relationship with her family. And she was saying, it's so nice that, you and your sisters get along so well. And I'm like, yeah, we like each other. We kind of like the same things in a lot of ways. And, yeah. Yeah.
I think that's interesting about siblings. So I have a brother that's directly related to me that I didn't hear from on Thanksgiving, unfortunately. But it's okay. I think it's hard on him. Did I say happy birthday? Yes, I did. Did I? It was on Halloween. I think I did.
Happy Halloween birthday.
See, now this is the ADHD I have to know. Anyway, but yeah, it's just been really difficult getting him to interact with me. Mostly just because I'm not a shit. I did give Helen happy birthday. He lives with my mom and so therefore I don't go there.
Yeah, I can understand why you might not want to go over to your mom's.
Yeah.
Back to the sanctuary, was that what it was called? Or the sanctum?
Oh, the castle.
The castle, okay.
Yeah, so I usually if I do get to see my brother, he's, we meet in the middle or the last time I saw him, he came over for dinner and met Ryan for the first time. That was, oh gosh.
Did it not go well, meeting Ryan?
It went fine. My brother is a little, a little socially awkward.
Okay.
So, and Ryan's a little socially awkward. So it was kind of interesting to watch them interact. Mm-hmm. So I kind of had to nudge them like baby birds and be like, hey, you want to ask Ryan about anything at all, maybe? And then, so it's not that it went poorly. It was just that maybe it wasn't the reaction that I had or the interaction that maybe I had kind of hoped for.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, but I mean, and it was also when we announced the engagement, I called my brother and I was like, hey, we're engaged. And he was like, cool. I just woke up and I'm like, yeah, but your only sister's getting engaged. You're getting married. And he was like, cool, good for you, I guess. I was like, oh, okay.
Aww.
So yeah, I think it's hard, especially because, there's that conflicting loyalty kind of thing too, where I can imagine that, he feels a certain way about me not wanting to interact with our mom. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there's probably a lot of emotional rebound, or what am I thinking of? Emotional
baggage.
Well, I think it's more like emotional feedback almost from my mom. She probably has a lot of feelings about me. And so, if I've invited Ian to something, sometimes she'll make an excuse for him not to be able to come see me. Mm-hmm. And just things like that. I just feel like, you know, he's got to feel like he's in the middle a little bit.
Yeah, that happens with families from time. Like, I have a coworker who recently, like, her mom is not in great health. Like, she's in her 90s, and she said that for whatever reason, her brother, who generally has been okay for most of their time, has just turned into this absolute demon the last year plus. And won't even like talk to her, or like if he does, he just texts her like a thumbs up emoji or something like that. All while she's the one like taking care of their 90-year-old,
Wow.
presumably on the downslope mother. So it's like, yeah, that just like it always makes me sad to hear stories like that with like family, because that also happened with like my mom's family to some extent. So
yeah, and it makes holidays weird too because. So, for example, I spent Thanksgiving with my dad, and I've been telling that to, you know, your coworkers will ask, like, hey, what did you do for Thanksgiving? And I'll be like, oh, I spent it with my dad.
Yeah, you do the sides, he does the turkey, right?
That's right. That's the rules. And, like, a lot of people were like, oh, you didn't spend it with your fiance. And I'm like, well, you know, Ryan and I are still figuring out what holidays are going to look like, especially because, first of all, he has more family than I do. And we haven't quite integrated them to the point where we could have been like, hey, let's bring Shannon and her dad over. And that's pretty much my only family nearby. And then I have family in Arizona. So that's also, Ryan doesn't love to fly. So that's...
I'm right there with you, Ryan. I'm not a fan of it.
I'm like... I told him, I was like, you know, we're going to have to go out there eventually, right? And he's like... okay. I don't think it's sunk in quite yet.
Yeah, flying is not I used to have to fly all the time when I lived in LA, like even just coming to visit home, but like going to and from jobs. Was never a fan of it. I also don't fit well into plane seats. Like it's mostly the shoulders tend to encroach on other people's space, so it's like a doubly bad thing. Like, A, you're incredibly uncomfortable, but also you feel bad because you're directly making somebody next to you uncomfortable and you have no control over it.
So on my flight to London back in April, we were on our way to London, and I have discovered that I cannot sleep on planes. Like, literally can't even get a wink whatsoever.
That sucks.
So I was on this entire flight, like, almost wide awake. And I was in the very last seat on the airplane, very last seat. And I think I did that strategically. And I don't remember what the logic behind it was, but it was still fine.
Yeah, so you can get out last, basically.
Yeah, but I don't know why I would want that.
Yeah, it's weird. It sucks that you can't sleep on planes because that was like my one respite on planes was like if I hunched over, like put my, my elbows on my knees and like maybe I could fall asleep for a couple of hours and then the flight would be over. But like if you can't, especially like on a flight to London, that must have been awful.
Oh, it was. And so I have to be in a certain kind of condition to be able to fall asleep. So, for example, I can't sleep with the television on.
Oh, me neither. Not at all.
Because there's things happening, and I'm like everything triggers my like, what's that? What's that? What's that? And so like I can't. And it's the same thing if I'm reading. I can't listen to like music that has words to it, just because like it's too much words and I can't focus. So when to sleep, I first of all on a plane, like things are happening all of the time, and so like I'm so hyper aware of everything around me that I just like it's impossible. So this time I had decided, I was like, okay, I bought an eye mask that covered my ears and I could play music, and I was like, oh my gosh, that'll be perfect. Well, this was, I think you still have to, but so I had the eye mask, but I was also wearing a mask. So my entire face was covered, and it freaked me out. So I couldn't fall asleep because I was freaked out.
I could see why that would freak you out, honestly. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, it probably triggers something. I mean, triggers a pretty primordial reflex not to have your entire face covered because you're going to die.
Yeah, pretty much. And then I felt really bad because a little boy with special needs was sitting next to me, totally fine, totally not worried about it. And then he was kind of like sleeping in the seat, which I was like, you lucky bastard. And so I'm watching a movie or something like that, and he's kind of like curled up in the seat next to me. His butt is like right up against my thigh, and His dad is sitting on the other side. I'm like, totally fine. And then I start to smell something.
Oh, no.
And my thigh, like, my leg got really, really warm.
Oh.
And I was like,
please say it was just a fart.
No,
please.
he shit his pants.
Oh, God, no.
And I felt so bad. And I didn't say anything, but, like, I could smell it. And I'm like pretty sure the dad could smell it too. So eventually he realized what had happened and took him to go get cleaned up and everything. But there was like a solid like 30 minutes where I was just like, oh God, what do I do? And so that was an unfortunate turn of events for everyone.
Yeah, that seems like it's very humiliating for everybody involved.
Yeah. So I didn't know if I should say something. I didn't want to embarrass him or make him feel bad. So I just kind of waited until he noticed.
And then took a shower in the bathroom.
Yeah, so I felt bad because like I knew the little boy couldn't help it, so I wasn't mad or anything. And thankfully, like the beauty of it not being piss is that I didn't get anything on me.
Oh, thank God. Okay, I thought that like I was picturing like a huge wet shit that just like seeped through.
It was he was wearing a diaper. I'm pretty sure,
okay.
Or some sort of like extra underwear.
Well, thank God for big favors.
Yeah, so it was just that it was warm and it smelled and it was right next to me. That was the only problem. But
okay.
Yeah, so that was an uncomfortable plane ride. And then on the plane ride back, there was like this huge medical emergency, and like this thing like blinked up and it was like, if anyone on the flight is a doctor, please report to please notify your steward or whatever they're called now, flight attendant.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? My plane rides to and from that trip were cursed.
Did you find out what the medical emergency was, or do they keep it pretty much?
It was another boy. It was a little older though, and he didn't have special needs, but he like had a seizure. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't one of those like shaking ones. It was one of the ones where they like kind of become paralyzed, and he, I guess, like slumped and looked like he was asleep, but his mother couldn't wake him up. So I heard, and it was a couple seats behind me. First thing I heard was this blood-curdling scream.
Oh, God.
Which I was like, oh, my dear God. And, oh, my gosh, I felt so bad. That mother was so distraught because it had never happened before. So, that was one thing. And I was like, oh, my God, are they going to have to, like, land the plane or something? But I mean, they got him resuscitated and everything like that, and he seemed to be fine. So we were able to get to Philly, but it was scary.
Yeah, those sound like, they say that there are certain things that like at altitudes, human bodies have weird adverse reactions. Like the only thing I can think of that like this is not comparable to having a seizure at all, but like one time when I was flying home to LA after Christmas, I had a really bad cold. And I thought my head was going to explode at some point. Like the pressure, it was like your ears popping, but they wouldn't pop kind of thing. And I actually asked the flight attendant about it. I'm like, hey, just so you know, like I'm feeling like super high pressure in my head. Is this normal? And she said, well, do you have a cold? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, that's what happens when you're at high altitudes with a cold. So I would assume that like it could trigger anything basically.
Yeah. Another like crazy thing that happened, so you just made me think of something entirely unrelated. So when I want to say I was like 20, I was working at Marshall's at the time, and there was one day where I was by myself up at the registers, and I was at the first register and I was just doing my thing, and I all of a sudden felt like I needed to throw up. So I was like, okay, like this happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I called up another cashier. I was like, okay, we're going to get through this line of people. I'm going to go throw up and then I'll feel better afterward. I didn't get that far. So here I am, I'm putting somebody's information into the computer. Now behind me, there's a countertop, and then there's a cabinet that had no doors. So it was just like an open space, and then like it had a little lip and then the floor. Mm-hmm. So next thing I know, I wake up on the floor.
Oh, God.
And I immediately like started crying. I had never fainted or passed out or anything before, but like I was putting the information in the system, wasn't feeling well, and then I woke up on the floor. My one manager is like trying to find out if I have feeling in my hands. I have another one standing over by the side, like not really sure what to do with himself. And I have another associate running up from the back with like a cold press. And I'm like, I must have been out a couple minutes for like all of these people to be gathered around me, and then all the customers are leaning over the counter looking at me. And
does it feel weird too? Because it feels like, I mean, I would assume that you have like lost time at that point.
Yeah. I had to have been out for at least 5 minutes.
Ugh.
So my customer's on the phone with like 911. And what had happened was, so first of all, I pass out. But I fall back, I hit my head on the countertop that was behind me, and then again on the lip of that cabinet, and then the floor. So they had to take me away in like an ambulance, and then it was just a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you obviously survived and are okay now. Like,
yeah.
It kind of reminds me, like, because we're going back and forth on what these things remind us of. When I worked for 3 years in LA when I was out there, I worked for Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve every single year, like as a production assistant doing more audience coordination, because like for what we would do is like Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve is live for the most part, but then all the musical performances for the most part are pre-recorded, and what we would do is we would just wrangle the crowd to make it look like it was New Year's Eve there. But like the way the production worked out, they would it was like a 12-hour shooting day. All the dancers were divided into like 4-ish hour blocks, and they were really not allowed to go to the bathroom or even leave or anything. There were so many like collapsed people during those times. One of which, like, there's this poor girl who was like perfectly healthy, but she just like was in a confined space for 4 hours, was not allowed to go to the bathroom, and then she collapsed and just peed herself. And I felt so bad. Like, she had to go away in an ambulance. And when we were helping her up, she was just so embarrassed about everything. I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm perfectly okay. I'm just really embarrassed that this happened to me. And then, she also hit her head when she hit the floor too. And there were a lot of these pass outs, like working in this kind of environment, like just because they wanted to keep continuity and make it seem like New Year's Eve. So I couldn't go to everybody's paying total attention to the dark audience in these situations on TV. But
right. Yeah. And the crazy thing for me too, like I said, like I immediately started crying when I woke up because I had never passed out in my life before.
Was it like embarrassment or like just scared?
It was straight terror.
Okay.
Because I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't and I was embarrassed, but it was mostly like I was scared. And they never really did figure out what had happened. They were like, well, you must be dehydrated. And I was like, no, I drink water all day long. Like, there's no way I'm dehydrated. So they never really figured it out. But yeah, weird.
You're alive, you're here, and you're podcasting and comedianizing. So
yes, you can't get rid of me that easily.
Yeah, you're like Rasputin.
Yeah.
Shot, stabbed, strangled, poisoned, and eventually drowned.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
One of the, just tangentially thinking about Rasputin now, because we mentioned that, I've read a lot of articles talking about how, like, Rasputin wasn't actually, like, killed as many times as people say he was, that he was more than likely poisoned and drowned, but just, like, he had such a larger-than-life persona that people exaggerated stories of how he got killed, which is how you end up with that, like, thing.
Going back to the Rockin' Eve thing, because this all started because we were talking about Thanksgiving.
I'd forgotten how this all started.
No, I know. Well, I think what we should do is like when we go to listen back to the podcast, like start with write down what the topic was that we started with, and then the topic that we end with, and like see how far away from each other they are.
I do have to listen to the podcast usually before I'll write like even what we were talking about as the title, because I was like, what did we talk about? Oh, I guess we talked about work culture and boobs in this episode. So
yeah, that sounds about right. But so I have beef with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Ooh, okay. Dish girl.
Well, I mean, it's not no special beef. Everybody's got the same beef. But so Ryan and I have this fun little tradition where we both watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. But like I said, I'm at my dad's house and he was at his parents' house. So we text commentary to each other the entire time. And So one of my main things is obviously they're all lip syncing, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is what it is. But what I do miss is when the parade used to have you had like all the famous singers and everything, but they would do like Christmas covers, you know? They would do like holiday songs, but now you had Paula Abdul doing like her one, like the one really recognizable song that she does.
I did see Paula, like we had it on in the background during our Thanksgiving, and I had to work, so I was only there for like 2 hours. But I did see Paula Abdul because I was like, I think that was Paula Abdul. Wow.
Yeah, and then what was his name? Sean Paul did Temperature, and I was like, bro. Seriously? I just miss the days where you could hear somebody famous do like a classic
Have
holiday
a holly
song.
jolly Thanksgiving.
Well, but the whole point of the parade is to usher in the Christmas season.
I agree with that.
And so I just that's my major problem with it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like just the idea behind all of this in general now, just because like every media personality is constantly working on their brand. Like that's part of the stipulation for, I guess, appearing in even the Macy's Day Parade. Like, I mean, it's called the Macy's Day Parade. It was never not to make money, I suppose. So
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing with the halftime show for the Super Bowl. Like, I don't know if you knew this, but the last 10 years, you actually have to pay the NFL to do the halftime show.
Oh.
Yeah, because they realized it was like another avenue to get another couple $1 million. But it pays off instantly because the amount of downloads that you sell as a major artist doing that, you make that money back 10 times over instantly in the night that you've done it. Plus, you got to be part of a cultural event. So, yeah.
Wow.
In fact, I remember, too, that, like, that's how a lot of opening acts get on tour. I don't know if they still do this, but my friend Harry was in a rap rock band in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I guess he still kind of is active. But when I was friends with him and going to his shows, he said that, like, their agent had at one point, because Nine Inch Nails was doing a tour and had presented them with, hey, you could be somebody in the opportunity here to open for Nine Inch Nails on this tour. He said the buy-in was like $100,000.
Holy shit.
And that's what I said. I was like, holy fucking shit, they're charging you to be on tour with them? And he's like, no, it's amazing because you make it back in merch instantly. Like if you have enough money to, like, as a bankroll to get a loan to go on tour with Nine Inch Nails, not only do you like reach hundreds of thousands of people, but you make it back. So
yeah. One of my new favorite bands is going on tour with another like kind of newer band, and I found both of them on TikTok, and I'm like seriously considering going, but like the closest show is in Pittsburgh, and I don't know if it's worth it, especially because the tickets are only like $20. And I'm just like, so I'm probably going to drive 3 hours to go to some dive bar that they've put up some sort of, because it's not like they're wildly popular yet. I mean, they have a huge fan base, but it's not nowhere close to like Nine Inch Nails, for example.
They might come closer with the next tour though. Like, or are you maybe?
I don't know. Well, their last tour, they were in Philly, and that was pretty recent, but that was their tour, but now they're going on tour with this other band, and they're like a special guest. So, and they're not headlining that tour. It's this other band that's also TikTok famous.
TikTok famous.
No, I don't even know if they're TikTok famous. It's just what the algorithm shows me.
You know what a funny thing is? You were the person who introduced me to TikTok accidentally because that used to be like all of your stories on Instagram.
Because the pandemic.
And Facebook. Yeah.
I was so alone.
And I was like, what is TikTok? And like, my friend Shannon is the only person doing this, and it seems like it's a lot like Vine. And the answer is, it's almost exactly like Vine. And then it was like, why did Vine go out of existence?
Yeah. I wish I had more ideas for TikTok or more time or like a decent place to record.
Yeah.
So, because my apartment's way too small and the lighting's terrible, so I can't make like the high quality videos I'd like to make.
I found your TikToks to be funny. So.
Aw, thanks.
In fact, I remember, what was it? I don't know if this was a TikTok or an Instagram story, but I do remember the very first time I saw Brian in anything, you were having him on, and it was like a discussion of your ex-boyfriends or something.
Yeah, rating my ex-boyfriends.
Yeah, because I thought that was hilarious.
I got in trouble for that.
From who? An ex-boyfriend? Well, obviously an ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, an ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it was a friend that, one of my ex-boyfriends, well, a couple of them. Well, we went to, I met a good deal of them because we went to the same school. And so this was when I was at Penn State. I dated two different guys while I was at Penn State. And they both went to the same university, so we ran in some of the same circles and stuff like that. So there was this girl who I was mutual friends with my ex, and she saw that video, and she got very, very upset with me because my dad had called him an alcoholic.
I do remember that. I don't know who the boyfriend was, but I do remember your dad was like, oh, he was nice, but he was kind of an alcoholic. So
the other thing that really was the sticking point was that my dad had mentioned about daddy issues. Now, what most people don't know is that boyfriend's dad had actually passed away.
Oh,
in a year before that video. Which.
That's unfortunate, but there's no way Brian knew that.
Right. It was kind of like it was like a whole thing, and that's what she got mad about mostly. And I was like, it wasn't intended. First of all, it wasn't really ever intended for him to see.
Oh yeah, obviously.
And I guess somebody ended up showing it to him. Mm-hmm. So I mean that I can own that it was probably a little bit distasteful, but I also didn't know that my dad was going to say that shit. So
well, it's kind of the fun of like putting a family member on the spot to talk about like, you know, because your dad is obviously invested in whoever you date as well as part of his daughter's like overall life health and everything as well. So his opinions are valid on those things. It was an unfortunate thing to say given the circumstance.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it was a funny video.
I thought it was funny.
So yeah. There was something.
We really should write down like a train of where these thoughts come from.
I know.
Because at one point we were talking about the Macy's Day Parade. And then there was one thing you said that like, to all the credit, none of the performances we did for Clark's Rockin' Eve were lip sync at all. In fact, there was one year that Robin Thicke was performing and he actually had like a throat issue because he'd been on tour. So he didn't sing, I forget what song he was singing that year, but he didn't do it poorly. But he just like tried to do way too much stage stuff to make up for the fact that he couldn't hit those high notes like he usually was. So like there was that. I remember the oddest story I had from that actually was with Jennifer Hudson's team at the time, because she performed the last year I worked there, and she was the spokesperson for Weight Watchers at the time, and she had like 4 people from Weight Watchers following her around everywhere, in making sure everything that she consumed was okay. And this was the even weirder thing. They were in the ears of the camera department to make sure that all the angles they were showing of her were flattering, because this was their whole brand invested in this woman. And I thought that was...
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I thought it was highly creepy. So
yeah. Well, and I mean, there's just so much pressure in the industry from that standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Taylor Swift just had had a whole thing because like she had spoken out about like in the industry, you know, the pressure that she feels and has felt to look a certain way.
Oh, definitely.
And she expressed that in her most recent music video. Well,
was this like her standing on the scale or something like that? I haven't seen the music video, but I've heard a little bit about this.
Well, so the scene is, you know, she stands on the scale and it says fat. And so, you know, and then she's like looking at, well, it's a whole thing. But their whole thing was like, well, you're clearly not fat, so you don't understand. Like, you don't have the same struggle. But, you know, when I was kind of going back and forth with it, it's like, well, first of all, like, it's not the same struggle, but I can see, you know, where she's coming from. Like, that kind of, you can have a really negative relationship with your body when everybody else is invested in it. In this case, I think both sides are actually valid of that argument, because, like, if you do feel that way in your own body, that's obviously very valid. But also, I can see some people, like, who are significantly heavier sort of also not being happy with that. It's just a sad situation for everybody involved. Yeah.
The idea of, like, body, like, this is something that, like, because we talk a lot about childhood issues on this show, this is something actually I still have a lot of bones with how I was raised about. And it still manifests itself with my parents. Specifically, my dad was hyper, like, critical of, like, people on TV being fat all the time and things like that. And I kind of had forgotten about it a little bit, but I was watching a football game with him a few weeks ago, and Jennifer Coolidge was on screen for, I forget what the ad was, since she's hot right now with the White Lotus and everything. And my dad's response was, "Oh man, she's so fat. What's she doing on the screen?" And I'm like, "Dad, Jennifer Coolidge is not fat whatsoever." It's like, "Well, in my opinion, she really is." And like a lot of this was kind of like stuff that he said throughout my childhood, and it first off, it caused a lot of negative body issue relationships with how I viewed women for like the start. And so that was a tough thing to deprogram. But moreover, it actually, like, I've always been a pretty heavy person, unless I try significantly hard not to be. And on some level, it made me, like, just hate myself even more because, like, as a kid, clearly you could see that, like, this person on TV, your dad is, chiding for being fat, is not fat. So what does that make you? And what does that make him think of you in that situation? So, like, the issue of, like, body shaming and what Taylor Swift was going through in there is, like, something is very much a peeve of mine because it still haunts me to this day, really, and still has like flavored all of my neuroses and anxieties.
Yeah, I think that I agree that that body image issues is definitely something that I feel like a lot of children they don't have the best upbringing in that sense. And I feel like everyone is just so overcritical of everyone else, and there's so and it's so unfounded sometimes too, because the first thing I thought of was like my mom was very, very large when I was a child, like very, and she's still a bigger person, but she had gastric bypass surgery probably when I was a preteen, early teenager.
How did it work out for her?
I mean, she lost a lot of weight, but by no means was she ever thin.
Okay.
It did help. But the thing was, like, she could only eat so much after getting the surgery and things like that. And I will recognize that, like, a lot of her, like, she had some health issues in relation to her weight. So I didn't necessarily, like, judge her for getting surgery to kind of reduce that. But she then, especially when things were in the height of custody battles between her and my dad, she would often fat shame him and his wife at the time. She actually would call them the beach ball twins around us, which was, I mean, my mom talked shit on them all the time, and then would accuse them of talking shit on her, and it was like a whole thing. But like that a lot, that negativity around body and how to view people, and putting a value judgment on that too. Yeah. Because like that was part of her argument of like, well, look, this person isn't a good person, and also they're fat, which made it sound like those two things were interconnected.
I think that you hit the nail on the head with the idea of the value issue as well. Like, yeah, it's more like your parents in that situation have been telling you you are not a valuable person unless you look a certain way, or at least attempt to look a certain way, which, is a very depressing thing to hear from your parent. And like I'm sure her saying that about your dad made you feel bad a lot of the time too. So
yeah. Well, and so that also has led to a lot of struggles with me as I've gotten older. So when I was a teenager, I was always very, very thin, and especially when I was a kid, I was tiny. Okay. Like, throw me around or break me over your knee, I'd snap right in half. And so I was always used to, like, having a really fast metabolism and eating a whole bunch and then not really worrying about it.
Oh, you're so lucky.
Well, so then, like, about a year or so, like, before the pandemic, I started to gain weight, and I guess I went through this like the kind of maybe my metabolism finally had some sort of change or something like that. And so, but then especially in the pandemic, I did gain a certain amount of weight, and so
I feel like everyone has to be like,
no, and that's absolutely valid. Is a lot of people have gained weight over the course of the pandemic, and I'm still kind of gaining weight. I've kind of slowed it down, but like that's had a little bit of an effect on me, and so being in comedy has not been super, super fun.
What? So you don't think comedians have been supportive, or they're?
No, so both times I did the roast.
Oh, no, the roast battle. I should have seen this coming.
Right. Both times I did the roast, because I thought maybe they would say stuff about how I have a shit personality and I'm a bitch, which is totally true and absolutely valid feelings there. But everyone had fat jokes. And then
well, it's all mostly fat men. Hello.
Right. Well, and so like recently, but even outside of the roast battle too, is, you know, when I've been hosting at like HMAC and things like that, like people have been making offhand jokes about like my weight, which
cool people.
Well,
I mean, I guess like the mantra of comedians is like everybody has to have a thick skin, but like
right.
Why be mean is kind of just.
Well, so I mean, the one thing about it is like it's caused me to like, you know, go into a little bit of anxiety and be like, oh my gosh, am I way fatter than I think I am? Because like I don't consider myself to be a fat person or to be an overweight person. But like a lot of people are saying shit about it. And now I'm like, well, goddamn, am I fat? And so like, I don't know. It's, you know, those things that you go through as a teenager and, you know, those things last. And
oh, yeah.
Even though cognitively, you know, it doesn't matter, like, you know, cognitively, I mean, like, I know that I'm beautiful and I know that it doesn't really matter if I've gained a little bit of weight. It's, you know, I'm not an unhealthy person. I eat well. I go outside and I'm not concerned about my health. It's just my body's gone through some changes that have put a little bit more meat on my bones, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that cognitively, but those things that you go through and those things, those internalized beliefs that other people press upon you while you're growing up, they just are really hard to get through sometimes.
Yeah, it's like I'm sort of in a similar boat. Like I do a lot of exercise actually. Like I'm not as spry as I used to be when I killed myself running marathons, but like I still run like at least once a week with my running friend, and I still work out a lot. But I still just it kind of just comes and goes. Like there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason behind certain times where I just will gain weight or sometimes lose weight, even though I'm not doing anything properly. But I do want to say, like with my current girlfriend, this is something I'm very thankful about her with, is like we've talked a lot about our various neuroses with each other, and I've told her I really appreciate that you like me and you think I'm handsome and everything, despite the fact that I'm a heavier person and all that. And like specifically, that's a big sticking point with me because I had a relationship in the past in which I did gain a fairly significant amount of weight during the relationship. And she was not kind to me about that, I'll say. And the way that I sort of phrased the way that she was reacting to the fact that I had gained weight was more like she was probably afraid that I was getting unhealthy and didn't want to lose me and that kind of thing. But it was very hard to hear, and it was I tried really hard. Like I was still exercising every day, could not eat healthy every day as much as I tried. But it was just like sometimes I just couldn't lose weight, and it was very sad and very difficult to have somebody you love and care about so much like take you to the irons so much for gaining weight over a period. And she always would punctuate it with like, and it's not about the weight gain. I swear it's not. But then she would proceed to like chide me for, in her words, gaining 100 pounds. I did not gain 100 pounds, but it was more like 30 pounds. But
I had an ex-boyfriend who my dad's ex-girlfriend, she almost beat the shit out of him one day because we all went out to dinner together, and I had eaten all my food and I was kind of eyeing up her fries, and I was like, you gonna eat that? And my boyfriend at the time was like, do you really need fries? And then Barbara, the girlfriend at the time, she like looked at him and like picked up her basket of fries and like handed them over to me and put them in front of me, and she was like, you eat the fucking fries, Shannon. And I was like, oh shit, okay.
Was this a work that you two planned just to steal Barb's fries?
No, he was like legitimately, and I didn't think about it at the time, but like after we broke up, my dad brought that up. He was like, that was the final nail in the coffin for me. For that guy was when he started controlling what you ate.
Yeah. That's a like, I don't want to talk too much about my dad on this podcast, but like you brought up a couple of things that he has said to specifically my youngest sister, I think it was, and we have chosen as siblings collectively to take these as being funny because that's the way we process them. But like, I remember one time, like 15 or 16 years ago when we were at the beach and she was wearing like, we were building a sandcastle and she was wearing like a 2-piece bathing suit. And my dad was like, I never noticed this before, but you look really good in clothes. And then also, like, there was one time a few years ago around Christmas time that she wanted to get something, like, junky at the supermarket. And her boyfriend Max was with her, and my dad was with them. And my dad said to her, like, put that back, Christy. Max doesn't want a blimp for Christmas. And
no.
Again, we have decided collectively to take this as funny because there's no other way to process it otherwise.
Oh God.
And that way you kind of like the funny thing too is that like by turning it into a joke, she sort of owns this now as opposed to being sad by it. But like, yeah, hearing things like that. This is just to give an example of like how the body image issues have been perpetuated with my family in general. And the ironic thing is my dad is not a light person by any stretch of the imagination either. So
well, that's how I always kind of feel when some comedians in the community come at me and I'm like, okay, hello pot, this is kettle. But there are two really good jokes that have been made about my body that fucking made me roll. They were so funny. One of them was during the first roast battle. Corey Moore, love Corey Moore. He went up and he just like looks at me and he goes, Shannon, you look like a pillowcase full of apples. And just to that day, like I lost it. It was hilarious. I fucking thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard.
I think the concept of a pillowcase full of apples is funny just because nobody's ever said that in the history of human language.
Right, exactly.
I don't think it accurately describes you at all.
I was like, I'm going to own that one. I'm going to just internalize that, and that'll be my personality from now on.
You can put that on your business cards. Shannon, pillowcase full of apples.
And another one was actually pretty recently when I was hosting at HMAC, and it was Andrew Brooks, who's hilarious as well. And I don't remember what I said. I had been drinking just a little bit. I think this was at Shit in a Hat, actually, maybe. No, this was... I'm not sure. Anyway. But, oh, no, it was definitely Shit in a Hat. And I said something, and he said, Shannon, nothing about you is flat. And I thought that was hilarious. But first of all, I don't necessarily see that as a fat joke. I see that as Shannon's very curvy.
Yeah.
So I don't hold that one against him. I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I think so Andrew is actually a shout out to him because I also find him hilarious. And he is a rare person I've met in stand-up and improv that crosses over both worlds. Like basically nobody does both stand-up and improv. Like there's only a couple of us. And I've gotten a lot of his improv shows tend to be on the same night as mine. And I've gotten the privilege of both seeing him in a lot of shows. And actually, he was a fill-in for Nuclear Family, one of our other shows, about a month ago. And he is just a delight to do things with because he'll latch on to, like, the funniest, weirdest thing and then just, like, turn it around. Like, the thing I'll always remember about him for stand-up is there was one thing of his group I think it was called Heartthrobs, and they were like in a barn, and he was playing a monkey, like it's a gorilla in one scene that didn't talk or anything, and just would like brr, 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 brr around for the whole scene. And then just out of nowhere, in the middle of the scene, he starts talking like a British scholar, and I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, because it was just such a funny escalation of like, oh, you were expecting this ape to just be like animalistic, and no, I've been trained at Oxford, actually. I did biochemistry and philosophy in my first year.
Yeah, I love Andrew. It was funny too because we all went outside afterward, and I like flagged him down. I was like, Andrew, that was fucking hilarious, and he was like, oh gosh, I'm so glad that you're not mad. He was like, I'm sorry that it was at your expense. I was like, no, it was fucking awesome.
Yeah, I don't like. Again, this doesn't happen to me that much. Like I think I talked about before how like the stand up competitions I would do, nobody would make fun of me. But what you just described actually reminded me of a couple of months ago. I forgot what the prompt was. It was, oh man, who was it? Don Driscoll. It was Don Driscoll, and he said something like, who here likes to go to the gym? And I'm kind of like, yeah, because I do go to the gym very regularly. And he looked at me, he's like, oh, how? Woof. And like the audience did not react greatly to it. And I remember Mike O'Donnell afterwards, was like when he took the stage afterwards, like, why are you making fun of Hal? Seriously. And I'm like, well, that was very touching that Mike O'Donnell defended my honor. I didn't need it, but thank you.
Hal just got this twinkle in his eye, the feelings he has for Michael O'Donnell.
Oh, definitely. We're D&D buddies for life. Woo woo.
Love that.
The only person who's ever made a crack about that to me, I was actually the broke comedian. And it was like the first time I went to do stand-up after like the pandemic had sort of gotten things back together. And I'm like, oh, hey, broke comedian. Whoa, Hal, you gained a lot of weight. And that was all he said, and just walked away, as the broke comedian is like to do.
That's how he is.
And I remember I said that to Karen. I'm like, I think the broke comedian just called me fat. She's like, oh, boo, broke, boo.
The broke comedian is a ship in the night. He just like comes by and is like, you're fat, and then he just drifts away into the mist.
He's like that guy. What was his name? Rick, the heckler at the Comedy Zone.
Yes. Oh my God.
The drunk guy who Rick has gotten a couple of shout outs in our D&D campaign, actually, where someone's like, oh, somebody just walks into the cave and like, I would take your mother, and then walks out.
I don't think this is a negative thing about me. Other people may disagree, but I have a very short fuse when it comes to like stand up.
I've never seen this fuse. I guess that's just a testament of how well we get along.
So like when that guy comes in, as soon as he starts making a stink, I get incredibly frustrated. And I've gone up to him a couple of times and like told him to knock it off. And Ryan hates when I get like this because especially if I've had a couple of drinks, the more confident I get about it. And I will literally start a fight. And he's like, you're too small for this. Please don't. And so very easily I could get beat up by someone 3 times my size just because I'm sassy.
Oh, you could destroy Rick because he wouldn't be able to hit the wall.
Well, fair enough. But that's the thing is like he pisses me off, and I like as soon as he starts making a whole scene, I usually end up having to leave because I honestly don't have any patience for it. And also when people are like talking really loudly in the back, I will lose my shit.
Just a bit of context for everybody out there who's not a comedian. So Rick, what he is a barfly at Boomerangs. And what he'll do is he'll get apocalyptically drunk. He'll just wander in, walking around like a paralyzed John Wayne, and he'll just yell something that makes absolutely no sense to whoever comedian is on the stage. It's usually like, I'd take your mother, or did you get her name afterwards? Or basically the worst dumb jokes that you could imagine that a baby boomer who's drunk at the bar and has nothing to reflect upon his life with will just yell to get attention, and then he'll just walk right out. And that's what's frustrating about him is it's clearly something. This is not a man who wants to actually do stand-up and join the actual community. He will just yell out things for superiority complex because he's drunk and because he wants attention.
Well, but it gets worse if he comes in and there's a woman on the stage.
Yeah.
He can get really just
gross,
outrageously disrespectful. And I am not above punching old men. Not above it. Just want everyone to know that.
Yeah, he is very disruptive. He is not a beloved figure in the Harrisburg stand-up community.
No.
For sure. To be honest, like there's almost like I can't think of a ton of hecklers that like really have been persistent. Like I could maybe count on 3 fingers. Like other than Rick, the number of times I've seen hecklers that have actually disrupted shows. And I remember I wasn't here this night, but I remember Andrew Glessner took video of this guy doing stand-up. I don't know if you were there, but what it was he said that he was like heckling everybody all night, and they told him to just get up and do stand-up, and God bless him, he did. And what the entire audience would do is they just started laughing uncontrollably in the middle of every single sentence that he would do, so he couldn't even finish his sentence. And it flustered him so much that he just kept restarting the same. He was very drunk as well, I should point out. And it was the funniest thing in the world because he kept trying to say, like, so I've been here for a while, but as soon as he would get to the A in a while, like the entire crowd would just erupt in laughter. It would really put him off his game. He would restart the sentence and the same cycle would perpetuate. So it was the greatest justice I'd ever seen for a heckler.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I just get frustrated. I just wish people treated other people with respect. That's probably just like what pisses me off the most of anything in the world is like as soon as somebody like starts to be disrespectful, that's when I start to.
And the interesting thing, like all the comedians are pretty respectful. Like even if you're a bad comedian, if you're doing it regularly, there's a baseline level of respect. I think for just getting up on stage, assuming you're not just going to tell horrible jokes or drop the N-word as a white person.
For sure.
All over the time. But like even some of the worst comedians I've seen, like everybody hangs out with them afterwards. Like, it's kind of like you're doing it, you're trying, you may suck at it, but cool. Like,
yeah, I think honestly, what's really funny is from what I've experienced in the comedy community, especially in this area, is just that like everyone is weirdly nice. Like they don't see themselves as nice, and they definitely put on this outer shell of being like. And so like for example, shout out Mike O'Donnell. We love Mike O'Donnell.
We do, yeah.
But like a lot of people come to me and they're like, yeah, we recognize that like Mike is, one of the like.
The gatekeepers
of comedy, and he's a little intimidating, and I'm like,
oh, I thought Mike hated me for the longest time.
Oh, same. And I still think he hates me sometimes, but every once in a while you crack him open and you see that little softness inside. He's kind of like a what am I thinking of?
A babushka doll. Where you pop up one and a little Mike O'Donnell comes out, and then you pop out that one and a little Mike O'Donnell comes out. Then you pop out that one and even littler Mike O'Donnell pops out, and then you pop another one and Manny comes out at the end.
No, I think I was thinking of like a chocolate covered something. I don't know, but he's got a soft interior.
Yeah, I think. That's another, like, because we talked about Ron Kane last time on the podcast a little bit too, and I hadn't really talked with Ron a ton until I guess really the pandemic when I started like talking to him as he was putting together like the backdoor mics, and Gary Limoges and I have been like some best comic and like movie making friends for the last 4 or 5 years. And Gary just kind of knows everybody because he books everybody and he's been doing it a while. And we were talking about Ron and he was like, hey, you would never know this from his stand-up persona. Ron is the absolute nicest guy in the world. Like I love talking with him. He's always really nice, very interesting, like all these sort of things. And I had barely just started stand-up when he was telling this. I'm like, yeah, I would not have guessed that based on his persona. So yeah,
I mean, I think... all this to say that I think some of the comedians in this area come off as a little bit, little bristly. But honestly, I honestly think that they're some of the most encouraging people. And I think if I said that to their face, they'd be like, no, I'm a dick. And I'd be like, yeah, I know you think you are. But they're all just so nice. They don't even try to be.
I hadn't even considered this too, but like I feel like the stand-ups are the most open-minded about doing things too. Like if I think about my time in Harrisburg as like 3 different separate worlds. It's like the filmmaking / vid jam world, the improv world, and then like the stand-up world. And the number of people I've gotten to cross into over either improv or filmmaking from stand-up is significantly higher than any other like direction the Venn diagram would go. Like, I mean, all the vid jam hosts, like you, Gary, Damien, Casey, and Liz, all stand-up people. I feel like I've had like 20 or 30 stand-ups in the various movies I've done over the years. So like, I feel like they're kind of just open for anything for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think they like, and I love how like, Karen, she like has her little get-together sometimes and invites the comics. I think that's hilarious. Like, especially, she's talked about it on stage where, like, she invited Damien, and Damien, like, brought his own food because he was like, I'm going to a white people party. And I thought that was hilarious. But I just, like, it's so funny because you have so many different people from so many different walks of life coming into the comedy scene, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's all... I think that's the interest... Like, one of my best friends in college, Steve Okawa, shout out Steve, because I think he listens to the podcast. He had told me, like, years ago that like everybody is intrinsically a writer because everybody does have a story to tell in some way. And so that's why I feel like anybody can be a stand-up versus like filmmaking obviously takes a certain amount of technical prowess, know-how, and like a lot of just managing personalities. So there's a lot more that goes into filmmaking, although anybody can learn it these days. And improv is kind of like its own different separate world too, because you're not allowed to write things ahead of time. You can only like draw on your own experiences. So I feel like stand-up more than anything is a very simplistic, very bare bones, but very effective way at just telling your story. And since everybody has a story to tell, like everybody intrinsically could be a stand-up comedian in some way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it too. Like if you're just a good storyteller, that can be a stand-up sort of thing.
Well, and I think too, I mean, comedy has just evolved so much over time. And that's why I love TikTok so much, is that it gives everybody an opportunity to be funny and to have a platform for it.
Yeah.
I see so many people who just have a knack for creating characters or just have really fun outlooks on things. So I honestly love TikTok for that and giving everyone an opportunity to be funny.
Yeah. I love, like, that's the great thing about, like, today's world and all that. Because I often think about, like, how well I would have survived, like, in even, like, 10 years, if I was 10 years older. Like, there were probably not open mics for doing comedy in Harrisburg at that time. Like, filmmaking was significantly harder. There probably wasn't an improv theater. And I kind of wonder about that. I'm like, would I have floundered because there wasn't really a lot of artistic places that you could do things back then?
Yeah.
I mean, there were if you went to, like, New York or LA or Chicago, but, like, who wants to live in those places?
Yeah,
Like,
too much.
yeah, lived in 2 of them. They can have it. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun thing in general. It's kind of what, like, this is a conversation that occasionally comes up with my dad too, because, like, he'll always be asked, like, oh, you doing shows, huh, Hal? Yeah. And he's generally very supportive. I want to throw that out there. But occasionally they'll be like, so when are you getting paid for this? And I'm like, probably never. Actually, I have paid money to do this. Like, and that sort of befuddles him because it's like the end game to somebody like him is like, oh, you're doing this just to like make money and make a career out of it. But I don't want to, like, actually when the Powerball was like at $2 billion and I played tickets because I can play in New Jersey, which I won $2. Yay. My dad was like, oh, it'd be really cool if you, like, very, like, genuinely he was saying this, is like, it'd be cool if you won the Powerball because then you could make the movie you've always wanted to make. And I was kind of like, I don't think I would use a chunk of money to make an unwieldy movie, honestly. Like, probably just give a lot of it away, like maybe make a big independent movie, but that seems like too much pressure too. Like, I kind of just want to do all this for fun at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Los Angeles beat out the fun out of me.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm tired.
Yeah.
So let's see. Coming down to the end of the podcast here.
Yeah.
Just about.
Like 3 minutes-ish left.
Okay. Let's see. What can we... you have anything coming up?
Oh, yeah. That's a good thing. That's something I wanted to mention, but almost forgot. Thanks, Shannon.
You're welcome.
Do have a couple of things. If you want to support Hal of Hal and Shannon this week, I have 3 improv shows this weekend, I believe, at the Harrisburg Improv Theater, which is on the corner of Hamilton and 3rd Street in Harrisburg. I'm going to be doing The Offbeats, which is my musical improv group featuring former Depression Vacation guest Walls McKelvey, among others. We improvise a mashup movie on there and make it into a musical. Like, we ask for a prompt. Like, my favorite of the most recent ones was somebody from the audience yelled out Forrest Gump, and then the whole angle is like one of us forgets, in quotation marks, that they've never seen the movie and they don't know what Forrest Gump is about. And in this case, Ben was like, I prefer Terminator 2. And so we did Gump 2 Judgment Day, the musical. It's sometimes very messy and doesn't gel, but when it does gel, it's magic on screen or on stage. So I'm in that. I'm in a group called Nuclear Family and then a group called Renegades this weekend.
Awesome.
So, and also, if you want to support my YouTube channel, episode 2 of 80s Girl featuring Ashley Madavi just got released today. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's a thing. So how about you, Shannon? What have you got coming up?
Well, first of all, definitely check out those things for Hal. Hal's going to send me the flyers for those things, and I'm going to remember to post them on the Instagram this time.
Yeah, there isn't even really a flyer for these anymore.
Oh, I'll post something on the Instagram this time. If you're not following us on Instagram, make sure you're following us at Depression Vacation Podcast. Probably probably should make like a Facebook or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we should.
I don't
make
know
a
how to
Facebook.
promote stuff, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. We'll learn together.
I don't have any shows coming up, but I'm available for shows if you're looking to book someone who likes to tell jokes, or if you just need someone to fill up some time. I'm here.
Yeah,
so
I'm
check
also
me out.
available if somebody wants somebody who's been slightly below mediocre since returning to stand up in the last year and a half since the pandemic ended. But I am available for all inquiries. We'll work for alcohol, among other things.
Yeah. And we talked a lot about stand-up comedy today. So if you guys are thinking about getting into stand-up, we've got some open mics coming up. Monday is the HMAC open mic, Mr. Tongue open mic. I'm not sure who's hosting. I think it might be my turn to host.
Okay. You said it's like once a month that you host, right?
Yeah, something like that. So it might be my turn. I'll post about it on the Instagram if it is. If it isn't, I'm still going to post about it. And then Thursday nights, we love the Comedy Zone at the Boomerang Bar and Grill. So two really great opportunities if you're looking to try your hand at stand-up or see some really great and talented and some not so talented comedians in the area.
Yeah, if you're in the Lancaster area too, the Point of View open mic, I actually have never gone to this iteration of it because I've only gone to it, which I did regularly when it was Chameleon Club, but it's the same people running it. I miss all of you dearly because I never see you anymore because I never go to Lancaster for open mics. But there's that on Mondays. And also Rookies, which is like a stone's throw away from my house. Aaliyah Wright does a fairly good open mic there on Wednesdays. So, yeah, if you guys want to get into stand-up, it's a lot I would, more than anything, and I sit on the VidJam board as I say this, than any other artistic thing I do around here, I think stand-up is the most accessible and it's the most rewarding for how much I put into it. So
yeah. But keep an eye out. See what Hal and I are up to. Otherwise, I don't have much else going on. So just make sure that you keep your eyes open for the next episode, and that'll be good.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get back on our schedule, but have a wonderful December, end of November, whatever it is, and we'll see you next week.